Well, then, yeah, we can start then. I'm excited to hear you talk because you talk really well about music.
Oh, well, that's no pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
That's a
and
lot
it's
of
early in the
pressure.
morning, so let's get ready to let each other down is something that I shout a lot when I'm with someone else doing a project together that relies on both of us. Hey everyone ever, and welcome to 20th Century Pop, the show where we try to understand the present while living in the past. My name is Tim Blevins.
And I am Bob Canning. And Tim, I have a quick question for you. Have you heard the new Huey Lewis and the News album?
That's your quick question?
That's my quick question, because it's a yes or a no.
No. No, I have not.
Neither have I, and it's very disappointing.
Oh, you own it. I saw a photo on Instagram.
I just bought it. It's been out for, I think, 2 weeks.
The look of it's very disappointing. I'll tell you that cover.
The look of it, yeah, the cover's so bad. Could have been so much better. Especially because it's likely their last album because of his hearing issues.
Oh. He doesn't like hearing Huey Lewis in the news. He just likes hearing Huey Lewis.
Rude, sir.
Because we're invested. Bob's invested, by the way, to listeners who may have joined the show after episode 12. Bob, I would say this is one of your favorite bands, right? Huey Lewis.
Yeah, I've loved Huey Lewis and the News since my youth. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite bands. And I actually spoke to my wife just the other day because
way to go.
Yeah, thank you. Liam Gallagher has a new solo album out as well. His second solo album.
Another band you're a big fan. Oasis, another band I would equate with you.
Many people do. And it kind of, I had a conversation with my wife about the fact that Liam Gallagher has had an album out for a few weeks, maybe even a month or so. Huey Lewis and the News has their likely last album that's been out for a couple weeks. And
because people don't want to hear it? Was that what you said? Last album because no one wants to hear it.
No, I want to hear it. Mm-hmm. But my point that I was making with my wife is that I had not, on the day that they were released, rushed out and purchased them as I used to do. Not, 10 years ago. I guess that was my routine. I would know when an album was coming out from an artist I enjoyed. I would be there the day it was released. I would purchase it and be listening to it since. My life has changed a bit with my children and work and money and other things. But yes, I made the effort yesterday and I went out and I bought my, I think, 10th Huey Lewis and the News album. And this all has a point, by the way, as I think you know.
I do, but can I ask you a question about what you're saying? So, did you know that the Huey Lewis and the News swan song, and also that one of the Gallagher brothers, I've already forgot which one you said, Chris, maybe? Did you know that those albums were coming out?
I did, yes.
You did?
How
did you find that out? Because,
well, the Huey Lewis one, I can't remember if I first heard that it was coming out from other people telling me, hey, your favorite band has a new album coming out. But also it just the press for this one, again, because of his hearing loss and it likely being their last album. I think that was there. And then for the Liam Gallagher one, I follow them. I follow the Oasis Twitter and the Liam Twitter. So
that's true. And I saw the Huey Lewis thing through the AV Club. You pick it up that way.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there too.
But in your heyday, I would say, of buying music, let's say even the 90s when you were buying music, how would you hear about a band having an album coming out? Because you knew when a new Oasis album was out, right? And stuff like that.
Yeah. I was big into music magazines at that time. So I was getting especially Q, which was a British music publication that I would pick up in
Was that also your radio station back home?
93Q, yes.
93Q. It's mentioned on the Huey Lewis episode as well, listeners.
That's right. So I didn't purchase NME as often, but I would hover around the magazine stand at New Era Comics or Tower Records and jump to their new releases or upcoming releases and reviews and things, and that's how I would kind of catch up. And then obviously the internet would come out, and I'd always daily log into different music websites and pay attention to what was coming.
And you would buy stuff day of release? That sounded like that was a big deal for you in the past.
Day of release. If I knew it was coming and I knew I liked the band, it was day of release.
Was there a community feeling to that? Like going into the store? This is, I guess, before you would listen to stuff online, right? You still do, but you were still buying CDs or cassettes.
Yeah, I mean, my community feeling for music came when I would try and share it with people, maybe unwantingly share it with others, like take this mixtape. But no, for me, it was very just about me, because I would go in and I would have my mission, the discs that I wanted, and then I would explore and maybe pick up some things that looked interesting. And at the time, they had listening stations at those places, so that was always great. That's how I got into old 97s, because I just happened to listen to satellite rides at a listening station.
Today's sponsor, an old album by Old 97s. When you would go in to get this, did you have a feeling? Did it feel like other people were there? I guess it sounds like it was very personal to you. This was just you. There wasn't like a social energy to, hey, we're all waiting in line for the midnight release of the new, God, I can't think of any band, so I'm just going to say live album. But like, so that there wasn't that. Like, did you feel other people, or were you aware of other people in the store even picking up the stuff you were picking up?
I was not. I was never aware. And even yesterday when I was shopping, it was head down looking at the discs. It was a very crowded store, but I didn't really have. It was just me and my head.
Did it feel familiar though? Like yesterday when you were, I know it wasn't the same day, but like seeking out the new albums, does that sensation maintain itself through the years, or has that changed a little?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's changed a bit. It sure has. And I kind of recognized it yesterday because I didn't know what albums were out there. And so I made a conscious effort to walk from A to Z and actually kind of around.
So you skipped the whole alphabet.
No, I did the entire alphabet, but
A through Z,
I skipped the U's and the V's. Actually, I got kind of bored. But along the way, I realized James has a new album out, and I picked that up. And the Futureheads, who hadn't had a new album for a bunch of years, I had no idea the Futureheads had a new album out, so I grabbed that.
I saw your post on Instagram where it was like the pictures of what you bought, and I didn't really stop to think about it, but that photo kind of encapsulates something that I'm glad you're still doing, and it sounds like it's an effort to do.
Oh, it's a total effort to do. Yeah, life priorities have changed. Money is spent elsewhere. Time is spent elsewhere. And yeah, that's why I was out of the loop.
As a segue.
Oh, here it is.
As a angle into today's episode, as a way of maybe approaching what we're talking about, would you say that you ever just buy like a single album by a band? Like, again, you're a completist. I know that. Are there bands that you have maybe just one album of that you could point at and say, I know where that is? There is.
Yes, and not counting bands that only have one album.
Yes.
But
not
even
counting
bands.
X-Ray Specs and the band I was in.
You were in a band?
No, I was trying to think of something there. Didn't come together. We were called Desk Lamp Cell Phone Off. I'm just looking at stuff on my desk. Gem Water Bottle Mouse. No. We were called Mac Computer Mothman Doll. Jesus, I have a lot of garbage in here.
Goodness gracious. Yes, I do purchase. I don't know if it's my intent to only purchase one album, but I do have several bands where I only have one album. Including bands that are quite prolific.
Now, why is that relevant, do you think, to this podcast, particularly today?
I think it's relevant today because that is, in fact, the topic for today's podcast.
Thanks for sticking around, listeners.
It's where I can't remember how the conversation started or where the idea came from, except I know it came from you. But we were talking about bands that we really have an album that we love of theirs, and meant something to us, if not still, at least at the time. And we never got into the band as a whole necessarily. Like, our only knowledge of that band and their music may be this one album.
Right, and these are bands that are big, like you just said.
Yeah,
they've either gone on to record more or had a big library at the time.
Like relatively big. Some of them I think we're going to say are quite huge. But we only had interest in the one album. I don't know if maybe they're, and we'll talk about it, maybe their style changed or maybe our opinion of them changed. But I still, of the ones that I'm going to talk about today, I still have these albums and I still listen to them on occasion. They pop up and on my phone, and I very much enjoy hearing tracks off of this album. But yeah, for whatever reason, and maybe we'll find out why, I never got into them. And I think you're the same.
Yeah, no, I think I came with a couple albums today as well. These are bands that, yeah, again, well, we'll find out. Like I said, I had the one album, or I listened to the one album. All three of them, I think are very big acts, and yeah, I never, just like you said, followed up on them. So why don't we jump into this? Do you got one that you want to start off with?
Yeah, I'll start off with, and this is in no particular order. So I'm going to start off with the one that I think is the biggest band, the most popular. Maybe not the most prolific
in the world.
Of the three that I've come with.
BTS? No, I don't know.
No, but surprisingly, the Foo Fighters.
Oh, the I would say the Nirvana spin-off band.
Yes, the Nirvana spin-off band. Dave Grohl, drummer of Nirvana, his band, in which he is the lead singer, and I absolutely loved the album. The first Foo Fighters album came out in 1995. In college, tragedy, obviously tragic situation with Nirvana and Kurt Cobain.
It was the year after Kurt Cobain?
I think it was about a year. Yeah. And so I was quick to pick it up just because of that, because of the Nirvana and Dave Grohl connection. And I picked that up and loved it, played it a lot of songs on mixtapes from that one. And you would think, with the way the Foo Fighters' career has gone, I would be all over it. And
yeah, they're huge, right? They're still very huge,
yeah.
I would think.
But I'm not, sir. Second album came out. I think it was called Color and the Shape. And I couldn't tell you a song off of it off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up at what their hit was. But I know there were hits. Because
you never had it. You never got the album.
Never got the album. But I know there were hits because they did all sorts of popular music videos and whatnot. And I probably enjoyed the songs off that album at the time, hearing them on the radio, but I never felt obligated to pick that album up.
Obligated? That's odd. Like you didn't feel like you had to pick it up.
Right.
Were you obligated to pick up the first one?
I guess I wasn't. No, I guess you're never obligated, but in my mind, in my own psyche, I felt like I needed to have the first Foo Fighters album.
Well, let's think about that, because you were in college. You said 1995.
Yeah.
So that was either, sophomore or junior year?
Yeah, it was probably, I don't know what time of year it came out. But yeah, I'd say sophomore year.
Coming off of, like Kurt Cobain said, like, were you a Nirvana fan prior to that?
I was.
Yeah. So there's obviously a curiosity factor.
Yeah.
This is the closest you'll get to a new Nirvana album. Was that at all? Like, were you anticipating this will be Nirvana just carried on? Or
I might have been. It's a long, long time ago, Tim. So it's hard to recall exactly, but I'm sure that was a factor. Thinking I enjoyed the style of music that Nirvana gave us, and so I'm sure I had this feeling that it'd be something similar, and I feel like I got that. I feel like it kind of was.
Was Dave Grohl? Did you know the name prior to it? Like, was Nirvana just? To me, Nirvana was just Kurt Cobain and their band, because I didn't really listen to them. He was kind of the front person, and that's horrible, but that's how I viewed it. Did you know Dave Grohl kind of as an individual?
I did. I mean, I did listen to the band. I had the 3 albums at that time. I think I had, so I knew the band members. Chris I can't say his name now. What's the bassist
pretty well
name? Yeah,
I think he showed me this apartment I'm in right now. No.
I honestly maybe it's because of the hour of the day, but right now I can't even pronounce the bassist names.
Yes, listeners, it's Daylight Savings Day, whatever you call it. We did the clock jump ahead to earlier today. It's very early in the morning, 7 something for you, Bob. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Information.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate you. So normally it would be 6 something your time. So,
but
ouch.
No, I knew who Dave Grohl was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was the experience in listening to it like once you got into that album?
I loved it. It was a decent experience. It was pretty raw. I think I discovered or learned, I don't know if I'd learned at that time or later, but he didn't really have a band. He did most of the instrumentation when he recorded it. The band kind of formed after, when he was getting the tour group together. And I think that group, and its members have gone in and out, but that's there's been a band that have recorded since, and maybe that's why I didn't get into the second one. It did have a slightly different sound, simply because other people were playing the instruments. But it was still a Foo Fighters album. It's just surprising because, like you said before, you know me as a completist, and so here we're going to talk about, like, why didn't I feel like I needed to get that other album?
Because you liked it. You liked that first Foo Fighters album.
Oh yeah, a lot.
Do you remember how long after it the next one came out? Like, I don't know if this just in terms of time frame was something up or.
I'm not exactly sure, but let me see if I can look it up, sir. 2 years later.
Okay.
So the second album came out in 97. And maybe that's why, now that we're talking about it. We graduated in 97. Maybe there was too much going on at that time. But that's bullshit, because I was buying all sorts of other albums at that time. So that can't possibly be it. Yeah.
But the sounds of that first album, and I'm sorry if I'm making you repeat it, maybe I missed it. That, from what I understand, I don't know the album well, it doesn't sound like a Nirvana album, right?
No, not really.
But you went into it anticipating that, didn't you?
Well, I anticipated, that genre.
Yeah. Which it's not, right?
I mean, I kind of think it still is. It's an alternative rock album for sure.
Is Big Me off that album?
Yes, Big Me is on that one.
That's not a Nirvana sounding. I like that song, but that's not a Nirvana sounding song.
I guess not. But a lot of the other ones are. This Is a Call, which was, I think, the first single. Kind of has a Nirvana-esque sound to it. But then, yeah, there's got some. Definitely, it's a change. It's Dave Grohl's music, and so obviously it's not going to be exactly the same.
But was that surprising to listen to?
No, I mean, it was a new artist, so essentially.
So it was like you're trying something out then.
Yeah.
And you still listen to it?
We don't pull my CDs off the shelf and pop them in like we used to. It's everything is uploaded to my phone. And so the album is on my phone, and when it comes on, I listen to it. I don't skip it. Yeah. So I still listen to it in that respect. It might even be one of the things I turn up as I'm driving around, listen to it, or listen to my headsets at work or something. But yeah, it's still listened to. I
don't equate this album to you. I don't think of you as liking Dave Grohl, not that you don't.
And that makes sense.
Because, like you said, and this is the point I'm going to drive home with you, because I don't know if I'm there with music for this. Right. You are a completist. So my assumption would be, like, at least, maybe not now, but you'd have at least a decade of those albums there.
You would think.
And you can't really pinpoint why.
Especially because I really like the album. And I enjoyed the band.
So what was the pull? What was the change? What wasn't the drive, which is a weird thing to ask?
I don't know. It could be because at that time I was shifting my musical tastes. And so maybe I just wasn't in the mood for that sound again.
But is there another band of that time, maybe that 95, and we're going to see if on my list too, 95 was a big year for music. There was a lot of stuff coming out. Are there other bands that released something in 95 that you stuck with, that you held on to?
I'm sure I did. I mean, I don't have a list of albums that came out in 95, but I mean, Oasis was releasing albums at that time, and I
left and right, it felt like.
It felt like, because at that time I was picking up their singles too. And so there was this constant flow of
manageable album lengths, their singles.
New music coming from Oasis. Name some other bands from that era that I was still buying things.
Well, I can name one because one of them is one of the ones I have on my list.
What's yours, sir?
So one of the albums I had, and it wasn't their first album, but an album that came out March 14th, 1995 that I adored. It's an album called A Boy Named Goo, and it's by the Goo Goo Dolls. And honestly, even then, I didn't even own it, but I do remember I borrowed your copy.
Yeah, because I owned it.
I borrowed it a lot, listened to it a lot. And to be honest, the Goo Goo Dolls were not a band I knew. I didn't know them in 1995, even though they've been around since like 1986. They're out of Buffalo, New York. But I think at the time they were constantly compared to like Soul Asylum and they were compared to the Replacements. And those were two bands I did like, is very knee deep in.
Is that what got you to borrow my album when you saw I had it because you heard that they were similar to the Replacements, your favorite band?
No, I think it really was the music. I mean, there's a lot of hit singles off of this. There's Flat Top, Long Way Down, Name, Jesus, the fucking name. And
yeah,
even I think That's Unusual. That was on the Angus soundtrack. These songs, when they came out, they felt very immediate. They felt emotionally right then and there. This band I thought was the hard rocking punk band of the 90s, which is embarrassing because we have a musical history that has X-Ray Spex and Richard Hell and bands like that.
Right.
But for some reason this was called punk in 1995.
Was it?
I think so. I thought so.
It
was one of those crossover things into the radio, wasn't it?
I would have known it better as alternative, but...
Were they an alternative band? Because I don't think I would have been drawn to them if they had that label.
Really? Well, that's something we should talk about someday, too, is how labels affect our interest in music.
And society in general.
True.
But yes. But yeah, I guess I wasn't necessarily calling this album punk. Maybe I wasn't calling it alternative. It was these songs. I didn't know anything about the band, but the songs, the guitar and the voice, they mesh. That raspy, strained, like squinting your eyes while you air guitar sound. That is what I thought an inner monologue should sound like. That's what at like 19 or 20, that was the immediate moment that I felt and heard. So when the lyrics came through that voice, it all just felt like this is immediate.
Would you say you really loved the album? I mean, you loved it enough to borrow it. Did you ever actually buy it?
Actually, when I turned 30, I had a big 1995 party. In 2005, I turned 30, so I thought 95, when I turned 20, was the best year of my life, so I threw a party that was all 90s, whatever.
Oh, I
and
wish
to
I'd
make
been
the
to
mixed
that party.
discs for it. What was that?
I wish I'd been invited to that party.
You're on another coast?
I know. That's why
Sorry.
I wish.
Did it not get there? Maybe it got lost in The Post. That wonderful Tom Hanks movie, The Post. But this was one of the albums I bought because I was like, I got to put more of these tracks on. And it was great. And I do love the album. I mean, I think it played well. And this is maybe why the album played well. In that at that time, like a song like Ain't That Unusual. Do you know that track?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure once I started playing, because this is another one that could have made my list. I have this album, but nothing else from the Goo Goo Dolls.
You had it as often as it wasn't in my room. I mean, even when we were roommates, I would borrow this a lot. And sometimes ask. There's a lyric in Ain't That Unusual that I just wrote down.
My collection and make sure I actually have it, and that your purchase of it, I'm making the air quotes, that your purchase of it wasn't actually taking my album.
It was very affordable and bi-coastal, so I don't know. But I don't know, this album played into like the mid-90s was when I was discovering, and I don't know if it's sincere, but a sense of like nihilism. Sort of the sense of like everything's phony, and like that's why Ain't This Unusual has a lyric, all we are is all we're told, and most of that's been lies. It's like a made for TV movie and I just blew my lines. It sounds silly to recite it, but at the time that was me, wrapped up in, it's wrapped up in this idea of TV, and it's talking about how what you're being told is not sincere, we're not real. And I needed to hear that in college. I needed to hear that in my life because I didn't have to be at college. I didn't have to pursue like a diploma-based job. I didn't have to be this person that I really felt like society was telling me to be, which is a waste of tuition money. But that song and other songs in this album became anthems. I don't think they inspired this feeling because they're already brewing, but it kind of gave it a tune.
So do you think maybe that feeling changed when the next album came out and you no longer had an interest in hearing those anthems? You were on to something else?
I don't think I was on to something else, but I do think the next album coming out, I mean, they followed the trajectory. We did an episode on Green Day's Dookie, which we mentioned. Maybe I'll link in the show notes. And I think the same thing happened with Green Day is that when I found when I found your copy of this Goo Goo Dolls album, just like when I found Dookie, they seemed to be the perfect group for me to find. And I think a lot of people felt like that. because a lot of people found it. So obviously and thankfully, both of these bands, they got popular, rightfully so, got popular and got famous, and everyone was talking about them. So by the time, and I think it was a couple years, but by the time the Goo Goo Dolls follow-up, which might be Dizzy Up the Girl, I'm not even sure, came out.
That's correct, in 1998.
Is that
3 years later?
Wow, your mind is like having an internet browser.
Oh,
open.
Isn't it? It's like, I don't know. I can't make a Wikipedia pun off the top of my head.
Wickedpedia.
Yeah, there you go. See, you're good with the puns.
Well, I'm looking this one up right now. That there's I went to Wikipedia, and they got a lot there.
There you go.
But this album, by the time next Goo Goo Dolls came out, and I don't know if it's because everybody was talking about it. I'm sure that played into it, but the idea of the Goo Goo Dolls was never what was relevant about this album. This is one of those, not trophy albums, but it represents part of a year of my life.
Right.
And there was no need to follow it up because, one, I wasn't, well, this contradicts it, I guess. Like I didn't think of 1995 at the time as the year. It was all still, when the next album came out, it was all still very connected. It was still ongoing, but I had the album. I had the words. I had the thoughts. I had other things I was into. So maybe by the time the album came out, I was just into more music.
Yeah.
Bands that I actually liked the bands. I was backtracking and anticipating new albums that there wasn't even space to want to hear more.
Yeah. That's a very similar take on one of my other albums, if you're okay with moving on to that. Or did
Totally okay.
Okay. Basically, almost everything you just said fits for my enjoyment of the Smashing Pumpkins album, Siamese Dream.
Now, this is an album I like. I like Siamese Dream.
Do you like the band, the Smashing Pumpkins?
That is a tricky question because I like songs on this album. I like songs on their next album. So my guess would be yes, but I don't think I've owned any Smashing Pumpkin albums. I've just had tracks copied.
Right. So I own, it's the only Smashing Pumpkins album I own is Siamese Dream. And it was very similar. It was of that moment. It was like a discovery during a time where I was really starting to discover and get into music.
You were in high school, right, when that came out?
No. It came out in 93, so I guess I could have been in high school, but I didn't discover the album until freshman year of college. And I discovered it. Do you remember they had the kiosks playing music videos?
Yes. I always saw Frank Black and PJ Harvey.
PJ Harvey, right? Which song was that? The
Big
Underwater.
Fish, Little Fish, Underwater,
yeah.
maybe? Yeah.
They played that one all the time, but they also played Siamese Dream. I can't remember the song that they played, but they played that, and that's where I discovered the song, and I absolutely loved it. And I picked up the album, and it was probably Today off that album.
I love that song. That's my favorite song.
And
Did you not know them from the Singles soundtrack?
No, because I don't think I picked up the single soundtrack until my freshman year of college.
Really?
Yeah. Because I wasn't buying a lot of music until I got to Boston.
So this timed itself well.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of places I could go to buy albums in Oneida, New York. My music intake really started in Boston, my freshman year of college, and this album was one of them. And this album to me is this is a college album, my college album.
Siamese Dream is?
Yeah. I mean, at least my freshman, sophomore year, because it was totally different than what I had been listening to previously. My Billy Joels and my Huey Lewis, and my Harry Connick.
All varying different sounds.
Were they? Yeah, I guess.
I would say that each of those one would be a fan of, but
yeah, but that to me is also my mom's favorite bands. So it was the adult contemporary high school me kind of discovering in college that there's actually some raw, emotional music out there.
Show will be right back after these messages.
Hey everyone ever, this is Tim Blevins, and sorry to break up the show with one of the same voices that co-hosting the show, but I wanted to talk to you for a minute about a band. Which band? How about that one band, that specific band, that only band that matters. I'm talking about Westerbergs, Stinsons, Mars, and Dunlapses, straight out of Twin Tone and not at all Soul Asylum. It's The Replacements, the most impactful band of my existence, and starting this April, I'm streaming a 5-day-a-week deep dive into figuring out why. It's every studio album in original order and one track at a time. That means talent show. That means color me impressed. That probably means Gary's got a boner. The show is called What's That Song? And you can hear the sincerity of it all when it debuts April 20th on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and probably some other podcast catcher. Visit the Not a Hologram homepage at nahpods.com and click on the link to subscribe from the very beginning. I'm becoming that person who talks about music all the time. And you can listen every day, well, except the weekends, to What's That Song, premiering April 20th at nahpods.com. Not a hologram, it's a podcast.
And now, back to Jam.
Now, was Siamese Dream the key to that door? Was that maybe the bridge that brought you over? Or that wasn't like Pearl Jam or something before?
It was probably Pearl Jam more than Siamese Dream, but this was along the same lines for sure.
Sure.
And maybe because Pearl Jam I followed and was more completist with Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam is like an all-the-time band.
Yeah.
Like there isn't an era for me. I mean, yeah, I'll listen to like 10 and I'll feel like college again or high school. But because I haven't listened to a whole bunch of Smashing Pumpkins, when I hear tracks off of Siamese Dream, that's college. That's it, you know? And so, yeah, that's it. It's like the vibe of it, the angst of it, just fit my tone at the time. And I just absolutely love the album, and it's surprising, and that's why I was really interested in talking about this. I want to come to an understanding. It's like, what about the next album, or what about the band didn't get me interested or keep me interested? Because you would think that it's like an album that I absolutely love so much, but I had no desire to follow it up with the next album. Maybe it's because the next album was Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and it was a double album.
Too much album.
It was just too much album. It was too much of a big deal.
But you had Extreme's 3 sides to every story.
Shit, yeah.
And by track 3, that's too much album. Well,
thanks for calling that out.
Well, it'll be in the show notes, listeners. Bob owns Extreme 3 sides to every story. And would have told you in 1994 how important that album was.
Yeah. Well, that was the young, naive me discovering music. And so
Ben in Court.
Yeah. So that album, it just was just a young kid being like, wow, look at the concepts that they're going for here. And not having discovered something like, I think, listening to a Siamese Dream is probably why I was like, you know what? I can trade this one in. I can trade this Extreme album in and get something
That's
else.
interesting, because I do think they came out at the same time.
Oh, did they?
I could be wrong in that. But you had a history with Extreme. Siamese Dream was new. Let me ask you, and this is a trait I know I have. It's not one I think of you having, but I'm wondering if it's playing into it. You said you saw probably Today by the Smashing Pumpkins, just, in college on this kiosk while you're sitting there, new situation all by yourself, and this song comes on. A lot of times with those videos, by the way, I couldn't hear it. I could just see it because of where I was sitting. But if you're hearing it, you're seeing this video. So you're attached to that in the moment.
Yes.
You're there, you're in a new place, you're finding yourself, you're attached to it. There's the song becomes the band. Now you can go find the band. And this happens probably with most music, to be honest. But by the time Melancholy and Infinite Sadness came out, people were talking about Smashing Pumpkins. They were a big band. They were huge, I think, right?
Yeah. There was a lot of anticipation for that second album.
So there was anticipation. There was people talking about it. And again, there was people talking about the next Pearl Jam albums to use that. We always went out for those. Like, we have a whole episode on Versus about how excited we were for that. So it's not that we're immune to the hype and the excitement of a group mentality, but do you think just because Smashing Pumpkins came out of nowhere in a new environment, it wasn't like it came across the radio, which is how I'm going to assume you found Pearl Jam. It wasn't like how you discover music now, where you know how to discover music now. This was something you found, like you said, in a transition period before you understood maybe the concept of music collecting, before you understood maybe the idea of finding genre music, like the idea of music as your life was burgeoning and starting, and this band came in purely because you're experiencing it in a way that you hadn't and probably can't multiple times. Do you think that in some way empowers it so that it's not that you don't want to follow the band, it's just maybe this album meant more than it actually would have to you anywhere else at any other time? Like maybe this isn't the kind of album you would normally say like, and I love this. I like this, but because of when it hit, is the moment, is the place in life, and is how it's tied into events with those little strands of experience and synapses going off, does that kind of put it on a pedestal so that nothing can achieve it? So it is something other than an album by a band.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that's a very good way to put it because I didn't know the band. And I was just really getting to know the music and the album. And yeah, like you're saying, and having it tied to the experiences of college and musical growth. I think, yeah, I couldn't repeat it. And then two, I think now that I'm kind of thinking about it, the more I learned of the band, I don't know if I was turned off by what I'm learning about the band, but I was like, this isn't really, the band itself isn't necessarily my cup of tea. And it was, I don't know if this is correct, but maybe I was thinking it was a little bit more goth than I wanted it to be, or that I was into at that time.
I was happy to be discovering goth, as you called it, but
goth.
But that's like that's interesting that learning about the band or the genre after the fact makes you not want further albums, but this one sticks in. I mean, honestly, part of what we're describing, though, is how discovering any music works the first time. Like your very first Huey Lewis in the News song, to go back to that superstar group of the 80s. The first time you heard it, it was a song. I think you said you heard it on your aunt's radio or something.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have known who they were then either, but that's a band you grew and stuck with.
Yeah.
But this, yeah, I don't know. Because Smashing Pumpkins is still a band. It's got a different lineup, I guess, but they're still around.
Yeah.
It's definitely a name, It's definitely a band people talked about. They have more albums. But yeah, Siamese Dream and a couple tracks off the Melancholy album are what I know.
Yeah. And I like the singles that I know off of Melancholy. But then after I couldn't tell you if I've even ever heard another Smashing Pumpkins song.
Well, if you stuck to the credits of Batman and Robin, you did.
Oh, there you go then. I heard it then.
But no, yeah, I don't. It's interesting because also but it's curious that it sounds like you don't like the band Smashing Pumpkins.
It's kind of, yeah.
I don't mean to put that in your mouth. I feel like maybe I forced that a little bit.
No, I don't really, I don't dislike them. It's not, I don't have a problem with them, but like the band, I like the album. I don't care for the band. I don't need to follow the band.
Can an album just be itself without an attachment to the band? I know that that's all in the mind, but like...
I mean, in the mind it can be, because that's what Siamese Dream is for me.
It is.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then there are other albums where it's like I never get to know the band. It's really just the album.
But you're never inclined to pursue the band with those albums. I guess I'm wondering what makes that difference. Like I have one of the ones on my list is actually a band that I've never had an interest in. I know of them, but I've never pursued anything else. I just had this one album. Do you know the band? I mean, I know you do. I don't know why I'm phrasing this way. Buffalo Tom.
I do know that band.
Do you like Buffalo Tom?
Yeah, I have an interesting path with Buffalo Tom. But
because they're a Boston band. What from the 80s? What is your past with Buffalo Tom?
My path is that I discovered them with their A-Sides album, their greatest hits album. So I don't know. They must have had 3 or 4, maybe 5 albums before that.
Oh, okay.
So their A-Sides album came out in 2000. And so I picked that up. Again, this is really the heart of me trying to collect music. So I did that, and I knew the title, and maybe I'd heard stuff from you, the name of the band, and so I picked up that album. And then from there, I went back and I picked up their 1998 album, Smitten, which I absolutely love. And then I've picked up every album since. I have not gone back and picked up their previous albums. But I believe you have one that you want to talk about.
I have one, and here's the thing. I don't think you got into, maybe I misheard you. I don't think you got into them because of me talking about them, because I didn't talk about them that I remember. They have an album that was released on March 10th, 1992, an album called Let Me Come Over. And again, just in case listeners don't know, they're like a jangly pop sounding band. You know, they're very much this, they sound a little bit like Later Day Lemonheads or Toad the Wet Sprocket, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a band, like, I feel like when I think of the 90s, I think there's the grunge movement, and then I think of this kind of music sound, whatever it was called.
Right.
A little poppier, a little more like maybe romantic comedy kind of sounding. But that's sort of the musical movement that I'm more, I guess, maybe attached to than grunge. I feel like it was around the same time. But
yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. No, it does.
Yeah. Is it necessary? We can probably cut it, but the album, this Buffalo Tom album, Let Me Come Over, I didn't know it when it came out. I didn't know it. I would have been in high school when it came out. I didn't know that. I didn't know their name at the time. I didn't know their sound. I didn't hear this album until heading to Boston, until I was in Boston at Emerson College. For our, like you were saying, I think with Siamese Dream, we were freshmen. My freshman year was the first time I heard this album. And the way that I heard it was on a cassette, a mixtape, as we used to call it. My best friend from high school, Nate, before I left for college, made me a little cassette to play. It was a 90-minute tape, had two sides. On one side, there was Sugar's Copper Blue album. Do you know Sugar?
I do know Sugar.
Second band. Yeah. So I stuck with them. So I was on one side. But on the other side of the tape, there was this Buffalo Tom album.
So he made you a tape of just two albums?
Yeah, I guess it's not really a mixed disc. It's more of like an arrangement of two albums. So two albums I think he thought were important to me.
Wow.
Would be important to me. The Sugar one, maybe because he was discovering that and loving that. But this one, I don't know why he picked it. But it was on this cassette. I didn't have the album art. I didn't have a picture of what the band looks like. To be honest, I don't even know if I had the album, like the band name on it. I think I must have. I don't know if I had the album on it, but it was just these songs listed on that paper flap in nice calligraphy, beautiful calligraphy, because Nate is an astounding artist. And back then it was cassette Walkmans that we have, so I couldn't just skip around tracks. I had to play the tape in real time or figure out the rewind stop to find certain tracks if I wanted to hear a specific track. So I don't know, just when I got to Boston and I started walking around, walking along the Charles, walking along Beacon Street, trying to find my voice and articulation class at a building, whatever it was. Yeah. All of these songs and this album were just the things on that cassette. Like I wasn't even sure they existed anywhere else. Like Siamese Dream, it was the songs, not the band. And I'm very touched when I listen to the album. It's a very powerful album to listen to, but yeah, I've never had an interest in them as a band.
It's strange how that works. I mean, sometimes it's all you need, I guess, is that one album. And I guess this correlates too to songs. If we kind of break it down, I'm sure there are songs that you and I both absolutely love, but we've never actually bought that album that it's on.
Yeah, and I think what's weird is I think that's coming back around again for me, because we talk about being completists, and it used to be if you heard something you like, you either could make a mixtape, but then when cassettes fell out of fashion, there was that weird period where between cassettes and CDs, I couldn't make mix CDs, so I had to buy the albums, and I liked buying the albums.
Yeah.
Now, because I can stream stuff, I can find one or two songs by a band and just listen to them.
Do you ever want, are there any new songs that you hear that you're like, I want to pick up that album? Or is it just because of the way music is delivered to you now and to the world now, there's just not a need?
Well, there are plenty of new songs and new artists, some who are releasing right now and some who I find right now, who I do seek out. But because I'm streaming it, what happens is I pull a couple of songs and I put them on a playlist. So I get to really know those. And then every now and then I'll click on the artist and listen to a full album. So I'm getting to know them. And I could recognize the song if I came on, but not having the CD, yeah, it changes a little bit of my relationship with it. Like I'm less inclined to be able to tell you, like Mitski is an artist who I really like, M-I-T-S-K-I, if I'm pronouncing that right. She's been recording for the past 10 years. I've only ever known her digitally. I've only ever known her through the Google Play app that I have. And I, one, would have a hard time telling you which albums certain things are to listen to. And two, without the CD and the ability to make a mixtape or a mixed cassette, I don't have a way other than saying, hey, look this up to physically share it with you. I don't have a way of saying, here are some things I like. I can send you a list. Like that's what I do now in Texas. Hey, have you heard? And I'll send a YouTube link to someone.
Yeah.
But that feels different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Completely different. And you're not putting as much, at least it sounds like, as much effort into it either. Like you're not curating something from song to song. Or like sitting there and listening. It's like, okay, I know I need to put this band on here. Which song am I going to do? And let me kind of just play a bit of each and see what fits the tone that I'm going for. So there's not as much invested into that process.
Do you make mixed discs or playlists for people still? Do you do that work?
I used to. I haven't in a while because of this drive situation that we're taking too long to fix.
The computer drive, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I used to. I would, and again, it's me. This is just me. I don't know who else does this, but there'd be situations at work. Maybe it was a very difficult time. Maybe we got through a hard project, and I would put a mix together of like a celebration songs or something. Or I remember that people were stressing out, so I did some calming songs, and I shared that with the group. You know, because I would just burn 12 discs or whatever, whoever was on my team that needed it. Now I run, this is weird, but I run a 3-day-a-week global conference call with the team. You're laughing at that because that sounds ridiculous, I'm sure.
Globe Con. Globe Com Con.
Con call.
No, Globe Con. Yeah.
But so I've been
Global Core. Do you know that from Time Travelers of Mystery Science Theater?
I think I do. Yeah.
Okay.
But I've been at this job for a while, and one of the things that is sort of routine is you set a call for 9:00 or whatever. And you don't actually start until 9:04 because you're letting everybody that was on a previous call get off that call and then get on this call. And most of the time it's just dead air. And so last year I started, because I was doing this 3 days a week, I figured, you know what, I'm going to play some hold music. And so I started just picking some random tracks that I enjoy and I felt, weren't offensive. And I would hold up my phone to my mic as other people were waiting to sign in, and it's become sort of like I'm like a radio DJ. So I'm finding ways to share music, but no, I of late haven't done a playlist. If my system was working, if the drive was working, for sure I'd be sharing playlists. In fact, I thought of trying to get the disc, the whole situation fixed this past Christmas, and giving out stocking stuffers of mixed CDs.
Oh, I used to every Christmas people would get mixtapes or discs for me for a while, and then
I used to do that too. I had
stop listening.
Yeah, favorites from the year.
Yeah. Well, and this might be a way to wrap it up. And I think that in what you're saying, maybe we can go this way, like the idea of what you're doing with your phone walking to and from the mic with a particular song, but maybe to backstep a little to this idea of mixtapes or mixed CDs or curating. You keep saying curating.
Yeah.
Or you've said it in the past. When you curate a list of music.
I said it once on this episode. Yes. I said the word curate once.
But if you hit that 30-second back thing on your iPod podcast catcher, you can hear it again. When you curate, I've said it a lot, I guess. Curate. Am I saying it right? Curate. Curate. When you curate a list of songs and you're giving them to someone, you're curating. Are you curating? Now I can't stop saying it. Are you presenting to that person the songs with the hopes of, hey, listen to this song? Or are you presenting the person with the songs by an artist in the hopes that you're like, if you like this song, check out the artist? Like, is there a difference there?
Yeah, there's a difference there. And it used to be check out this artist. That was my drive in the 90s and early 2000s. It was check out this artist. And now it's more just about enjoy this tonal collage. It's more about the songs now.
For me, it was always about, here is the song of the artist. I think you should like this song. Because in my head, it's like, they already have to like the artist. There's no choice. But I bring that up because I'm not sure. I don't necessarily know where to go with this, but I'm wondering if this, and wondering why it would be that we could love an album so much and never have an interest in following up. Because that is a bizarre, whacked out concept, given what we do in the show, how we interact and how we talk about music, that neither one of us would have the drive to get another Foo Fighters album, to get another Buffalo Tom album. That doesn't make sense.
Right. It does not.
But inherently in what you were saying about the different reasons of making a playlist for someone, at some point, and I don't know in terms of the span of our life, I don't know when it happened, but some experiences present the music as the band that we identify with. There's a word that I hate that people use all the time, brand. That's your brand. Pop culture is all about brands now. Star Wars, Transformers, whatever. And I like Star Wars. I like Transformers. They mean a lot to me. And they're all encompassing, I like the comics. I like the cartoons. I like the toys. It's also possible and less common, but probably possible to really indulge, live, and inhabit the single piece, which is what these albums are. Not be like, now I have to get the hairstyle of the artist. Now I got to, see the artist on tour. I got to know the things the artist knows. And that stuff's fun to do.
Right.
And that's how we discover things. But every now and then, and I don't know how, something will just exist as the piece. And I find it's harder for this to happen now because we can just see a movie we like, see a performance in it we like, type that person into our phone, and now we have their history. Now we can like that person. And that's a great tool to have. I'm not putting the tool down. I'm just saying that I don't know. I still don't know why I wasn't driven to pursue these artists, why the album of big name artists that were easy to pursue, why that album matters. And I do guess it's so entwined in a moment, but all of these things are. My love of the Replacements comes from moments of these songs. My love of Ann Magnuson comes from moments of her showing up in things that I like. These things, I don't know what the difference is. And that's confusing to me. It's confusing that either one of us would have approached pop culture like that back then.
Yeah. It's an enigma. And I don't know that we answered it. I was hoping we could figure it out today.
Yeah, I know it's tied into something with the moment. And for me, I think a little of it might be tied into everybody gets into it. Because then it's like, I'm trying to think, what's an artist I got into that I really loved that started becoming big immediately following that I stuck with. I really got into Liz Phair. She kind of already had an album out when I got into her. And it wasn't like she ever was huge. She was very big in the community, but it wasn't like, and now Liz Phair is on a big stage or something.
Well, you stuck with Pearl Jam.
Yeah, but I got into them with 10. I got into them at the beginning. Yeah, you're right.
And then they got huge, and you stayed with them anyway.
Not with them anymore. It's after Vitology I stopped. So I got 3 of their albums.
You can go No Code.
No, I don't have no code.
No Code.
No Avocado album.
Yeah.
Their guac album. I hate that word.
I have
Pearl Jam guac.
So completist wise, I still have all Pearl Jam albums. I haven't missed one. Here's the thing about being a completist. I don't know a song off like their last 2. But I have their last 2 albums.
You have them out of a responsibility to the band, or maybe a comfort or something, but it's that completism. Yeah. And I guess it's something we'll have to explore again in the future. I don't think we're getting to it exactly, but I am fascinated by this idea that there are these albums. And I'm maybe I'm wrong, but I looked at I think my filter for the world is cartoons and then comic books. That's my main thing. Music seems to be how you talk, how you relate, how you exist in a way. That's your pop culture niche, whatever.
Sure.
And so I would like to come back to this at some point because it's
we'll
odd to me. 2. What was that?
Sorry, clearing my throat. We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, because you picked some bands, that Foo Fighters as an example, and Smashing Pumpkins, they're big bands that only got bigger, but you isolated and you got, maybe that's what it is, you got what you wanted out of the art.
But then that sort of alludes to the fact that I need more from the art of other artists. And is that art ever really any different? It's still the same band, so isn't the vibe still the same? Like, I don't know if that bands necessarily, there are some, especially those that last for decades, that change their sound and their topics of song and things, but isn't Pearl Jam basically singing the same thing all the time?
Well, I don't know, because I don't listen to them, but the 3 albums I listened to, no. I think, I think you can tie into a band that always sounds the same, and then they're one, I think a band can be garbage that you like, and then they do a Janie's Got a Gun, you're like, look how different this sounds. But I think, artists within the band are as varied as all of us. They have a lot to say. Good artists. They have a lot to present, to perform. And I think a band like, look at Belly, a band that we both love, that doesn't have that many albums. I only know 2 albums. I know they've had some since. Those albums have a sound. I could probably pick out the Belly sound, but those songs are very individual. Those songs are telling different stories or approaching different things.
Yeah.
So I think there are artists we stick with because whatever that particular artist or one of the artists in there is going through or dealing with, we can relate to some of that. Maybe there's a similar trajectory for a little while. So we jive or connect with those songs, and maybe they veer off into a new thing. Like now they're a father and they're writing about kids, or now they're whatever it is. They discovered country, or they discovered, like Bob Dylan did when he went through his born again phase. Like there are phases where suddenly it's like, well, I don't relate to something there, so we veer away. But I think the bands we stick with are because whether or not it's sincere, that artist struggling with their music to explore something happens to coincide with what we're struggling through.
Yeah.
The albums maybe are these albums we tap into. It's like, here's the one thing we shared. Like you and I shared a first year at Emerson College. You and I don't share having kids. So those are 2 different experiences. I actually will listen to both, but I'm going to relate to the college one. And that's the one I'm going to know. I'm not going to be able to relate to the kids ones because I don't have that. So maybe inherently in that, we're just looking at bands where it's like they hit on something at the right time, and then that was all we needed.
Right.
And if this is all you needed, well, then you got it, because that's the end of the show, right?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
I think the end of the show was 8 minutes ago. But
oh crap!
Yeah.
So backtrack on
that
your
was my
podcast
fault
catcher.
because I've asked a follow-up question. I should not have done that, but we're good. We're good.
We're pretty good. To follow up on the follow-up question, pretty good. And what's pretty good? Well, 20th century pop is pretty good. If you like it enough. Let's say you're like, I'll listen to it. I'll have it playing when I'm driving in noisy traffic. Then why not subscribe to it? You can subscribe to the show. That way you get a new episode every other week, a new episode. Every week you get something. Some of them are reruns, some are new. But you can check us out at 20popcast.com. That's the main website. It'll be changing soon, and we'll get you details of that next show. But for now, you can still go there. Subscribe to the show on whatever podcast catcher you're just skipping around with those 30-second buttons on. The most recent episode is always up on the main screen. We have links to all the past episodes there as well, so you can stream them right on the site. Still updating a few of those links, but most of the episodes should be there. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us at 20popcast. If you're on Instagram, you can follow us at 20popcast there. And the big favor that I always ask, if you are listening to the show, if you're enjoying the show this week, we'll say this week, maybe with this one, share it. Share the episode in one of your social media feeds, or share it with a friend. If there's someone you think would like to listen to a show that is sort of exploring how pop culture built us to where we are and what it means to now question that maybe in your mid-40s or just later in life, find an episode that you like and maybe pass it along, just out of curiosity, because we are trying to build the audience, and that's cheaper than paying for promotion. Bob?
Yeah, I'm still here. The favor I always ask is to get your feedback and your input on today's topic. So I would love for you to follow us on Twitter. I'm at RH Canning, and just at us with your album that means something to you from a band that went on to make 4, 5, 6 more albums, but really you only care for that one. and have no interest in the other. What's yours?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. What's in your CD play? That's dumb.
No.
But yes, what Bob said is good. Anything else? Anything you want to mention?
I'm good today, man.
You're good today. You were pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to bed.
All right, that's true. Well, glad everyone set those clocks forward. Sorry today's original topic of outbreak fell apart, but it just didn't seem relevant to anything that's going on in the world. So we did this. I feel like you don't have anything else.
I thought that outbreak reference was a very good way to end it.
You did?
No. But I did want it to end.
All right, ready? You know what? Do you have to pee or anything?
No, I did that right when I woke up 20
too.
minutes ago.
But I have to, again, I'm going to be 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's no problem. So, listeners at home, I have a text from Tim prior to starting this recording where he says, just have to pee, be right there. So, I assumed he peed then, which is about 25 minutes ago. And then he sent me the link, and now he's peeing again, so he must be drinking a lot of coffee, as he indicated earlier. Not that you have heard this, because this is not worthy of even a clip show. So, there you go. Thanks for listening. And no, we are not talking about Sponge. I can't even remember the name of the Sponge album that we did enjoy. Or a Sponge song.